wanted to make a video about the possible and plausible origins of political correctness, and also address some points that Karen Strawin, aka Girl Rights What, has made in the past, and really just try to connect the dots on several things that have been brought up by both myself and Barbarossa over the years. And this is all speculation, but I think it's fairly well founded, and I will just continue, or rather start right now. So, if you were to ask a standard person what the origins of political correctness are, for one thing, people on the left wouldn't acknowledge its existence, and people on the right would say, well, it's clearly Engels, Marx, and the Marxist cabal, of course, who, they engineered all of this, and leftist politics, and da-da-da. That, of course, is not digging deep enough. It doesn't actually give us an answer on a sociological or biological level. That's just not sufficient, and I mean, as usual is the case with these guys who say it's the Marxist cabal for everything. Now, I've decided not to try to formalize it because it's this idea is still in infancy. It needs more testing. It needs more data, observation, etc. But Karen Strawin, aka Girl Rights What, repeatedly has made mention of the fact, and this is a fact, that as society has become a safer and more wholesome place for everyone, men, women, children, there seems to be an inclination, a human inclination, both on the part of men and women, albeit for slightly different reasons, although both are very concerned with the welfare of women, to reperceive things that were formerly harmless or just giant whatevers, or for you French speakers out there, giant n'importe quoi, and sort of refashion them into something that could be perceived as dangerous. And I originally wanted to formalize this and call it danger theory, but I mean, I think this idea is still in its infancy, and I think it needs more testing and observation. But clearly in the past, the environment that we lived in was fraught with danger. It was even a few hundred years ago. It was a brutal, vicious world. We didn't have the shelter, and I mean not just shelter in terms of the ceiling above our heads, but the environment we lived in, the overall environment, the urban environment that we live in now, for example, is a very sheltered one for the most part. It's incredibly safe compared to past times, and this has changed over time. What has not changed, of course, is human instinct and the desire to protect and pander to female instinct. Females throughout history and prehistory, human females were always concerned with their personal safety, historically, prehistorically, physically weaker than men, and really possessed of an inability to affect their environment. And of course, though they're capable of it, self-declared hypo agents as opposed to hyper agents, which men tend to be. And back in the day, there was reason to be fearful. Not only was there acute danger in the form of savage animals, smilodons, cave bears, etc., warring tribes, rape, injury, and so on and so forth. These were all real and acute dangers, and the possibility of falling to one of these dangers was quite real as well. And so, over time, obviously, women have developed an acute danger sense, in fact, a hyperbolic one. And this is what I really want to talk about. We saw, unfortunately, with the walking in 10 hours for New York blah, blah, blah bullshit video, how, and this could be a cynical action on their part, but I think for the most part, a lot of this is subconscious, how even the most harmless of statements or gestures or whatever can be interpreted under the right circumstances, or for that matter, the wrong circumstances, by women as hostile, as dangerous. Now, of course, we all know the double standard here, that had these guys been Brad Pitt or George Clooney, it would have been a little different. But that's neither here nor there, and I don't want to talk about that, the standard hypocrisy we encounter in these matters. But there does seem to be this tendency of reassessing things that were formerly not perceived as being dangerous, as being threatening, as being harmful. And men kind of lack this apparatus. We don't really have the same, I mean, even though we're far more likely to be victims of violent crime and far more likely to fall victim to poverty and depression and drug addiction, alcoholism, and you name it, right? We don't have that. We don't have that natural inclination, if you will, of self-preservation, albeit hyperbolic in the cases of women. And so when we listen to that, we can't hear it from ourselves. We have to hear it from women, and of course, men. We are naturally inclined to pander to women's needs. That's what we evolved into, and many of us have spent years now deconditioning ourselves away from that. But I'm pretty sure, even now, in each of us lies dormant this, unfortunately, this tendency to pander to females. Never mind people who have never struggled with these issues, try to dissect them, and of course try to decondition themselves away from that paradigm. Those people obviously are just going to hear a woman cry, a woman shout out, "Oh, I'm in danger," this or that. They come running. We know how that goes, right? The same kinds of people that expect, foreign men to be taking bullets for women they don't even know. And this is the kind of paradigm I'm talking about. So yes, certainly this manifestation that we saw in the 10 hours of walking, and now most recently this idea that women have now become so paranoid that they're going to start using the technology that men created, these mobile phone applications, to take pictures and document the quote-unquote harassment they're experiencing and their discomfort. And of course, the thing that they constantly reiterate is, it's all about my experience, right? You have to listen to women's experience. Even in the gaming situation, I remember a situation where Gaider, David Gaider, the head writer, happens to be gay, but that's neither here nor there, or maybe it isn't, maybe it is, talked about the experience of the women on his writing team, and it was quite telling. So I'm going to be actually reading off this passage because it's quite insightful and just shows a kind of classic example of what happens. And this is within the gaming context, but this extends across the board. So Gaider, and I'll be posting a link to this, Gaider had a Tumblr piece. I don't really pay attention to Tumblr a while back. And he talks about the female perspective in game development, right? And he goes on about how he jokes. He says, I happen to be fortunate. My team of writers in Dragon Age currently consists of 9 people, most of which are female. It's reached the point that when we consider new hires and transfers, I tend to joke, we could use some more testosterone in here, with a big goofy grin. Mine is probably the only department that can get away with saying such things. Yeah, okay. However, he goes on and he says, we were sitting down to peer review a plot. A peer review being the point where a plot has had its first writing pass completed, and whoever wrote it sits down with the other writers as well as representatives from cinematic design, editing, and level art to hear critique. We've all read it first and written down our thoughts and go around the table and to relate any issues we encountered. As it happened, most of the guys went first. Typical stuff. Some stuff was good, some stuff needed work, etc., etc. Then one of the female writers went, and she brought up an issue, a big issue. It had to do with a sexual situation in the plot, which she explained could be easily interpreted as a form of rape. It wasn't intended that way. In fact, the writer of the plot was mortified. The intention was that it came across as creepy and subverting. But authorial intention is often irrelevant, and we must always consider how what we write will be interpreted. In this case, it was not a long trip for the person playing through the plot to see what was happening. It's a slightly different angle. And it was no longer good creepy. It was bad creepy. Before I continue, we all know what Bad creepy is men, say, hitting on women that they're not attracted to. And good creepy is when Brad Pitt hits on women. Let's bear that in mind. It was disconcerting, not cool at all, and as this female writer was not alone, all the other women at the table nodded their heads, bore consensus, blink, blink, and had noted the same thing in their critiques, so we discussed it, changes were made, and everything was better, crisis averted. And it goes on. So there was a perfect example of numerous female dynamics going on there. First off, this entire, I would say, hyper emphasis on just feeling and perception, and who knows, that might have been a scene that was relevant, might have actually fit better into the plot, but we'll never know now because, well, it's been changed. And of course, one woman says something and all the other women agree. We all know that's generally how women operate. One woman says something, they all agree, because that's just the female in-group preference, the board consensus. They agree with each other. But it just goes to show just how much stock women put in experience, quote unquote experience, and perception rather than factual accounts and evidence. They're not all that interested in that. And we all saw, of course, based on what David Gaider wrote, how quickly the men just jumped in. They were mortified and quote didn't see it, and because they don't understand the female perspective. Okay. So yeah, we can definitely see something going on here with this whole idea of experience being independent of whether the experiences are actually linked to facts, being the primary determining factor in women's concerns about danger and feeling uncomfortable and so on and so forth. Everything, and we see as society progresses, as things become more civilized, safer, etc., that feeling of discomfort actually doesn't decrease, it grows and extends to all sorts of things. People saying good morning to you, apparently, and so on and so forth. Now, what I want to do is link this kind of development to political correctness. Now, political correctness ultimately is all about cause and effect, right? It's causing offense, right? Causing offense to someone. Let's not say who, but causing offense to someone because they don't like what you've told them, or they feel that it's hurtful, or it besmirches their personality, or who knows, right? Offense is a kind of danger, I suppose, and more importantly, it's definitely to feel offended at something or by something is almost certainly a form of discomfort. Now, I'm pretty sure by now that since we know that the political correctness, the kinds that is expressed by people like Gaider and all those, is primarily on the left wing of the aisle. I see a lot of correlation there. I see the idea of this perception of danger being omnipresent, instigated by women because they're constantly feeling uncomfortable at every little thing, at every little sound, at every little murmur. Okay, and political correctness is kind of a politicized version of this, right? It's kind of saying, well, just as women feel so uncomfortable at every little creak and murmur, and we need to protect them, political correctness tells us, I'm feeling really uncomfortable if you tell me that I am obese, or I feel really uncomfortable if you tell me that generally speaking, my group of people, whoever that group might be, is not very good at this. Or I feel really uncomfortable by saying that men, when you say that men have better, generally speaking, men have better spatial brain apparatus than do women. That's an extension of this whole, oh, I'm feeling uncomfortable. And so I think, as we can in so many cases, ultimately trace back the political correctness movement, if you will, to almost purely gynocentric origin. Its provenance is, I'm almost certain by now, gynocentrism, because men, for the most part, were not so as sensitive to these little things that make women so squeamish and uncomfortable. Uh, for one thing, we grow up having to deal with a lot of bullshit. Anyone, if you've ever been on the internet, I mean, anyone, when I used to really be into lifting, I'm not as much as I used to be, and I posted on, say, this forum, Get Big, I mean, the stuff, the trash talking, the stuff that went on that forum, I think it might be one of the top 10, I mean, unrivaled sites for that. I mean, there are no limits on that. And, you just have to learn to deal with it. And so I think you become inured and anesthetized to it to some degree. And you just realize it's not that big a deal. Uh, but to the politically correct, everything is a big deal. Every little word, if it's not said in the right way, they're obsessed with rules and doing things. They're obsessed with how things are done rather than that they get done at all. And this is yet another concern of women, right? Men just like to get the job done. Women want it done whilst wearing, I don't know, denim jeans bought from the Gap with bootstrap cut, and I don't even know what I'm talking about. I know nothing about fashion, and cashmere sweaters, and then it's okay. All of this is part of political correctness. The squeamishness at hearing things that make people feel quote unquote uncomfortable, the elaborate amount of rules that they lay down for people to follow, and the fact that it's not important that things be done, and we see this in gaming. It's not just important that things be fun, right? A game is fun. It needs to be fun, and here's the catch, whilst obeying and adhering to certain rules, right? It can't just be a cool game. It's got to be a cool. It's a cool game secondarily, but primarily it's a game that respects people's feelings, their wishes, and nobody is hurt by it. What does this remind you of, gentlemen? I mean, this is the same kind of thing that we encounter in the gynocentric model that we see on a constant basis in the human female. The human female is much less concerned, and I talked a lot about this in The Contented Irrationalist, with objective truth, with factual accounts, with evidence, than she is the way things make her feel, right? Just as political correctness as a abstract manifestation is, frankly, a lot less concerned with things just being good or fun or well done than how it's done, right? A game could be utter shit, but if you don't offend X and Y group, then it's still okay. They put a priority, the politically correct put a priority, a premium on I guess you want to call it etiquette, if you will, but the format rather than the outcome and the content, right? So the formatting is much more important. And formatting, to extend the analogy, for females in their interactions with each other, right? They're obsessed with clothing and fashion for the most part. Yes, not every female is like that, but generally speaking, that's true. They're expressed with how things are done, what's being said rather than the actual how is things being said rather than the actual content. This is just standard, typical, run-of-the-mill gynocentrism, and I'm pretty sure by now that political correctness is just another overt manifestation of these sorts of concerns, be it in the form of, oh, I feel so uncomfortable because Bob Smith said this, and he makes my skin crawl when he says it, or he makes me feel insignificant and inferior to we have to include this kind of person in this game, and that kind of person in this game, and this kind of person. And once we've done that, then we can start working on a good game. All these concerns, be it for formatting or for just feeling comfortable, they all ultimately go back to this gynocentric urge of just being at ease with the world. And the problem is, and here's the catch-22, that, gentlemen, in no time in the future, not any time close to our lifetimes, our instincts, our guttural basic instincts are going to go away. They're there. And one of the most basic guttural instincts of the human female is to feel threatened by everything around, at every nook and cranny in every corner. And so if Karen Strawn is correct about her idea that there's a kind of proportional increase in the or rather a reappraisal of situations which were formerly deemed as non-threatening, as code red, as threatening, and this increases tantamount or in proportionately to the amount of safety we have, and just how civilized and placid and calm our society is. We're going to have a serious problem beyond what we envision now. Remember, there was already talk about male night curfews, I think, and that men should not be going out at night, and the women now want to use mobile apps to take pictures of men that they feel threatened by, and I don't really have a vision of how much worse it could get, and what that would involve or entail, but new technology will be created. It will be created by men, of course, and then utilized by women since they're not going to create it themselves. And we're going to see more of this, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse, just as we've seen, I might add, in the last couple of years, political correctness just reached levels of absurdity. After all, at the end of the day, Gamergate, all this, Zoe Quinn, Anita Sarkeesian, this is just, I mean, capital F feminism, political correctness, I all link it back to gynocentrism. This is all what it comes down to. And that's just getting worse and worse. The political correctness is just, it's insane. And it's irrational. But then again, the hypervigilance that women experience, rather than just looking calmly at the facts, they're the safest demographic out there. I mean, they're safer than children are. I walk out in the street, and look, I don't, maybe I should be more aware, but I live in a kind of mixed neighborhood in Germany. As you know, Germany has a large Turkish population. In my neighborhood, I'm one of the few non-Turkish people. A lot of the establishments are Turkish. For the most part, I've always been treated well. And in fact, the Turkish people are one of the few people who address me politely. I mean, using polite forms with me, whereas Germans tend not to do that. But yeah, my neighborhood there's some dangerous areas to it. And I go out there. I'm running and potentially in certain areas that are a high risk of maybe being assaulted. And I do my best to avoid those areas because, you have to be aware of these things. But the fact is that, I as a male, or you as a male, depending on where you live, you're at a greater risk of being mugged or shot or whatever than any female out there in Western civilization. And it's insane, but there you have it, right? And it's going to get worse and worse. I mean, they're going to try to document people with mobile apps. Political correctness, feminism, the reason why they go hand in hand is because they all stem from lowercase f feminism, i.e. gynocentrism. This need that, first off, women, they just automatically side with each other on almost every issue. We know that. But then again, men have that guttural instinct, that gut reaction. Oh, a woman's in danger. Or more importantly, a woman says, oh, I feel like I'm in danger. And thus runs the man to the woman, and he saves her and listens to her needs. And this is how this mess got started in the first place. Right? Unfortunately, I don't relish being the bearer of ill tidings, but it will get worse, gentlemen. And as I said, if Girl Rights Watch ideas is correct, then we are in for a lot worse than what we're experiencing now, because technology will increase. Society probably, almost certainly, will become safer overall. And every little thing, every little issue that formerly was not an issue will become an issue, both to the politically correct and to the women screaming fire in the theater. Anyway, that's all I got to say on this topic for now. It's a very interesting topic, and at some future date, I'd like to do more formal research, maybe actually look at specific sets of data and so on, and talk about it more extensively. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the beginning of your week. Everyone take care, and may Zeus watch over you. Bye-bye.